Thank you for tuning in to Alabaster's Box with Tiffany Hayes, where we are inspiring and enriching thoughts. Today we have a very special guest by the name of Travis Knapp. Travis, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, that's not a problem at all. So I asked you to come on the show today to discuss with us, or to share rather, your awesome testimony. It's mind-blowing. So I want others to hear what I heard as well. But before we get to the person that you are today, the pastor you are today, the guy that enjoys motorcycles and cars, tell us a little bit of your upbringing. Who were you as a child?
As a child, I think I looked for some sort of significance. My father died when I was 3, and then my mom met somebody else, and he was with us until I was 12, and then he committed suicide. My father also committed suicide. So in my younger years, my grandparents had been church-going people, and I'd been around faith and gone to church and done some of those things, but my mom had been estranged from the faith for a long time. So there's just kind of confusion and not really knowing where you fit in and what life has for you. And so I grew into a place where I became angry and bitter, and life, and I think the enemy just kind of kept throwing a lot of things in my direction. When I was 12 years old, I was in an automobile accident, almost lost my left arm, almost died. And so when you go through something like that and you're left with physical scars, and then you try to reintegrate back into school and kids and bullying, and so you just begin to build this outer shell and take on a persona that's not really what God intended in the first place. So my upbringing for me was kind of an opportunity for me to see what I didn't want to be. And so being injured at the age of 12, I was in the hospital for 30 days straight in traction. Got addicted to morphine while I was in the hospital, because you're getting it 3-4 times a day at least. And then when I graduated from there, I went back home to Colorado with bandages and wounds, and then I had to try and start a brand new school because my mom had moved from the town that we had lived in for 10 years to another town, in the process of me being at my grandparents' in South Dakota when the accident happened. And so when I come home, I'm trying to integrate to a new school. I've got all these bandages and all these things that I'm trying to deal with. And so after being hooked on morphine, I just kind of resorted to taking cough medicine to feel different and feel better. And I was really sick all the time because of being in the hospital that long. My immune system was destroyed. So, then I started experimenting with some pot and started getting high with some kids at school and trying to fit in. And then the next year we moved again. We moved to Idaho. And when I went to Idaho, after already having a young experience at the age of 13 years old, that whole summer I was there with some friends of my mom. I had no friends of my own until I started school. And then once I started school, I immediately dove back into the drugs and just kind of made that my lifestyle. And basically from the time I was 13, until the time I was 25, that was my lifestyle. Using drugs, selling drugs, just became what gave me purpose. And the lives that I destroyed didn't matter, and the things that I did didn't matter, and some of the situations that happened didn't matter. What all that mattered was I became the king of my own universe. And came to a point where the state of Idaho said, you've got to leave, you can't be here anymore, or you're going to go to the penitentiary. And so, my mom found this number for the 700 Club, which is all the way out here in Virginia. And so she called this number from Idaho at 10 o'clock at night one night, and somebody picked up the phone, and they ended up giving her a number for this program called Teen Challenge, which is a faith-based addiction recovery program. Well, there was one in Minneapolis, and there was one in South Dakota, and the one in South Dakota was literally 5 miles from where my grandparents have lived their whole lives. The building that they were utilizing was the hotel that my grandparents had spent their wedding night in. And so my mom did not want me to go to South Dakota because she didn't want my grandparents to see what I'd become. She didn't want my life now to affect my relationship with them. And so she kept calling Minneapolis, and nobody would answer the phone. And when she did get an answer on the phone, the person who was supposed to call her back would never call her back. She couldn't get through. So finally, she gave up and she called the South Dakota one because there was literally no time left. So within 24 hours, she talked to the South Dakota Teen Challenge, got me a package, got me in there. And within 2 weeks, I was on my way out of Idaho. And so, you know, in that process, I really had to come to a place where it was time for me to make a decision. At the age of 25, I was already sick and tired of doing drugs and selling drugs, and I wanted to be out of the life, but it's had such a hold on me. It was easy to make money. It was easier for me to make money selling drugs than it was for me to work 8 hours at a job, because I could make 10 times the amount of money and do literally nothing. And you know, I want to go out and work at a car repair shop and make $10 an hour if I'm lucky, and work 60 hours a week and have nothing at the end of it. So, you know, it just came to the point where I wanted to be away from that situation, but I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
And through the court system in the state of Idaho, God made a way. At 23 years old in 1993, I was convicted of my first felony, which was delivering and manufacturing of marijuana. Spent 2 years on probation, and within that 2 years, I ended up with a 23 felony count probation violation, and then another felony possession charge for methamphetamine. Now, my first initial charge for delivering and manufacturing was what they called a withheld judgment. I'd never been in trouble before. So the judge made an arrangement with me where if I completed my probation and did everything I was supposed to do, that they do what they call a withheld judgment. So once you're done with your sentence, then they wipe everything clean. So after doing that, getting my probation violation felonies and getting that possession felony, that went back before the judge. The judge had leniency on me and said, well, since this is all under the initial charge, if you can go somewhere and get your life straightened out, then we'll work it all out. So then I left to go to Teen Challenge, and it's kind of been a whirlwind ever since. You know, you asked me a question about my awakening moment, and so when I left Idaho, I had to spend 2 weeks with my grandparents before I could move into the building because my probation paperwork had to process. So in that 2 weeks, I brought out an ounce of methamphetamine and a pound of weed, and I sat in my grandparents' basement. Now, my grandparents have been Christians their whole lives. Never smoked, never drank, never heard them cuss. Farmers, hardworking people. And so for me to even think about bringing it into their house was ridiculous. But for me to spend 2 weeks holed up in their basement smoking and getting high and not thinking that they were going to realize anything was wrong was insane. So I spent that 2 weeks doing that. Had gone through all of my drugs, and then I spent about 3 days sleeping. So I woke up one afternoon, it's about 5 o'clock, come upstairs, start listening to the news, and 2020 is running a special on how heroin and the methadone program is really helping heroin addicts in Amsterdam, which it really isn't, but I took that opportunity to try and convince my grandparents, who've never smoked, never drank, never even understood what a drug was, that drugs should be legalized, and I really never really did anything wrong, and that I shouldn't be in trouble. And so at the end of that conversation, I ate dinner, and I went back downstairs in the basement, and I'm laying in the basement, and just this overwhelming sense of, what have you just done? Like, yeah, for me, that was the low point of my life, where I just realized the impact that that it had on me, that I was trying to convince my grandparents, who were these amazing people, that this is what should have been. And so that night I just, I went to sleep and didn't really think about it. The next morning I woke up, and when my mom sent me to South Dakota, she sent me with 3 books. She sent me the Bible, and she sent me with some books by Frank Peretti called This Present Darkness and Piercing the Darkness. And those 2 books are all about the spiritual warfare that goes on around us in life that we don't even recognize. And they're just stories about characters in these books who begin to see, and as they walk through their journey, you are being made aware of the spiritual conflicts that are going on around them. So I woke up that morning, made up my bed, which I hadn't done in 2 weeks, and as I finished making up the bed, I walked by these books, and something in me just said, you've got to read this book right now. Like there was no, oh, it looks like it might be good, maybe I'll check it out. It was like, you have to read this book right now. And so I picked up the book, I started reading it. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning, and at 5 a.m. the next morning I finished reading the book. Went through the whole book through the night. So it's 5 a.m. I'm in a basement, there's no windows, it's pitch black. And so I close the book, turn the light off, and I'm laying there in the bed. As I'm laying there in the bed, all of a sudden it's like wind comes into the room. And it's not just like a breeze blowing across your face, it's like a 70-mile-an-hour gust is blowing you. And all of a sudden I'm looking up at the ceiling, and as I look up at the ceiling, it's like I'm looking down into a tornado, but it's going up into the ceiling. And it's just swirling and swirling, and the wind's getting greater and greater. And finally, these things begin to swoop down out of this tornado and begin to like attack me like birds. And I'm literally laying in the bed, swinging at the air, saying, come on, I'm ready to fight, I'm ready to fight, I'm done.
Everyone, I hope you guys are enjoying what you are hearing thus far. Please tell your friends about us, tell your church members and your family members. Let's take this word to the world. Please share, subscribe, and like. And remember, if you change your thoughts, you change your life. Thank you.